you should play Vlad the Impaler. Quick, name a more iconic duo than vampires and Halloween. I'll wait. Okay, fine. There's a lot of iconic horror duos. But I like vampires. And because it's my video... Hey, thanks for watching. Smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get notifications on all my future videos. We're going to be talking about vampires. And when you think of vampires, there is none that is more exemplary than Count Dracula.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
Whether it's the inescapable shadow of Bela Lugosi with his exaggerated Romanian accent, the chilling and cold-blooded Christopher Lee monster, or Gary Oldman's Gothic tragedy of a romantic hero turned villain, the depictions of Dracula are many and far-reaching. There have even been attempts to depict Dracula as he truly was. That is to say, Vlad Tepes, better known as Vlad the Impaler, a Wallachian voivode whose cruelty inspired tales of horror across Europe and turned him into a mythological embodiment of evil. It was a story so gripping, it captured the imagination of Bram Stoker and inspired him to pen his novel, and link Tepes to vampirism, a link that is permeated through pop culture to this day. However, these depictions of Dracula are less common, and with good reason. In reality, Tepes is a fascinating figure. Mind you, a lifetime of war and torturing your enemies by turning them into shish kebabs will do that for you. But nevertheless, the time period and circumstances of his life are great fodder for storytelling, and the name Vlad Dracul is still enough to evoke a sense of terror and foreboding. It makes for some great inspiration for exploring horror in the dark medieval. And that's a feeling that's captured really well in Vlad the Impaler. The video game, not the man. Vlad the Impaler, again, the game, not the man, is a choose-your-own-adventure type interactive novel. You play as an agent sent to Istanbul by your friend.
My friend.
Your friend, who happens to be Vlad the Impaler. Your mission is to investigate the source of corruption that has eaten away at the city, as more and more vile and wicked deeds surface from within its walls. You'll encounter grisly murder scenes, defend yourself against assassins determined that you are an agent of this darkness, face off against unholy creatures, and bear witness to some really grotesque secrets behind closed doors. You choose one of three classes, an explorer, a soldier, or a mage, each with their own strengths as represented by a rudimentary stat system. These stats fluctuate as you resolve events scattered around the city. Sometimes your decision will raise your stats, other times your stats will drop. But these stats determine whether or not your decisions will actually succeed during challenges or not, particularly towards the last handful of chapters. You can approach these areas in the city and these events non-linearly, and there are plenty of events, so it's impossible to see them all in a single run, meaning that the game attempts to focus on replayability at its core. There's even a rudimentary morality system which unlocks one of two different prestige classes based on your disposition. They basically come down to whether or not you pick the decision where you act like a jerk or you don't act like a jerk. While most of these decisions are binary, a few do require certain stats in order for you to survive, and there are a few that offer some levels of reactivity, to which I give the game some credit. Just don't go into it thinking it's going to be a deep choice and consequences simulator, because it ain't that. After about 3 or 4 of these events, you'll reach the end of a chapter, which more or less tries to tie the narrative together into a single package. The game's outset hints that you have 15 days to investigate the horrors that have overtaken the city, though this just seems to be a narrative hook. Think of the plot as something like The Name of the Rose meets Dracula, or more aptly, The Name of the Rose meets Vlad the Impaler in search of the real Dracula, with a dash of Clive Barker thrown in for good measure. Observe. When your eyes adjust, you realize that there are people chained to the walls. You have entered some sort of prison cell, but why would the windows be so easily accessible? You risk lighting a candle. To your horror, you see that the people chained to the walls have no arms or legs. Some have been whipped. Others have been partially coated in wax, most likely applied while scalding hot. All 9 of the prisoners are awake and staring at you in fear. "Please," says one. "Kill us." "Who are you?" you ask. "The Red Harem," replies the man from his harness, his shoulder and hip stumps clearly having been cauterized. You hurl your torch at the thing that's grabbed hold of her, and are suddenly struck with terror as it illuminates a large, slavering ghoul. The undead monster pulls the girl to its mouth with incredible strength. She screams as its powerful jaws bite deep into her skull with a sickening crack. You shake off your shock and leap forward, swinging your sword and screaming wildly. The ghoul roars in defiance, but something about you seems to aggravate it. With a seething hiss, it drops the girl and retreats into the shadows. When you reach her, you find her brain half exposed and partially eaten, swelling out of her skull. "Help me," she says. These are the parts of the game that are really Vlad the Impaler's strong suit. For a game that has no real gameplay to speak of, it really needs something to make it worthwhile. Unfortunately, Vlad the Impaler finds its stride in its depictions of the horrors you encounter on your journey. These moment-to-moment vignettes delve deep into the rot that is consuming the city. It has some strongly evocative writing, chock full of the blood and the gore befitting of its Gothic horror setting. It also has some hauntingly beautiful artwork to go with these stories, which does a really good job of driving home that sense of foreboding bleakness that you're up against. In short, Vlad the Impaler revels in its depictions of the dread terror that is shrouded within the mists of Istanbul. Make no mistake about it, Vlad the Impaler isn't really a particularly strong game. Despite its systems, it isn't an RPG, not really. It's much more of an interactive story than anything else. And while I know this game is incredibly niche and that its limited content seems paltry, I think that it is a fairly good choose-your-own-adventure-esque romp drenched in a Gothic horror setting that doubles down on some good, expressive writing. It's a solid couple of hours, especially considering that it's only $1 on Steam at regular price. So if you're into interactive fiction at all, or you want something nice and casual to play by yourself this Halloween, I think that you should play Vlad the Impaler.